On 8 August 117 AD, the greatest conqueror Rome had ever known, Emperor Trajan, died in the city of Selinus while returning from his eastern campaign. His death marked the end of Rome's age of relentless expansion. The empire stretched farther than ever before, reaching from Britain in the west to the Persian Gulf in the east. It looked invincible, but beneath its enormous size lay a dangerous truth. Rome had become too vast to control. Trajan's chosen successor was Publius Aelius Hadrianus, known to history simply as Hadrian, a skilled soldier, experienced administrator, and distant relative of Trajan. Hadrian inherited not only the world's largest empire, but also one of its greatest challenges. Rebellions had erupted across Mesopotamia, supply lines were overstretched, and thousands of Roman soldiers were scattered across newly conquered lands. Many expected the new emperor to continue Trajan's dream of endless conquest. Instead, Hadrian shocked the Roman world. Within months of taking power, he ordered Roman forces to withdraw from much of Mesopotamia and Armenia. Provinces won through years of bloody warfare were abandoned almost overnight. Many senators were furious. Some accused Hadrian of wasting Trajan's greatest achievements, while ambitious generals believed Rome was surrendering out of weakness. But Hadrian saw something others refused to accept. An empire could not survive by conquering forever. Every new province demanded more soldiers, more roads, more governors, and more money. The farther Rome expanded, the harder it became to defend its borders. Hadrian believed that protecting what Rome already possessed was far wiser than chasing endless victories. It was the beginning of an entirely new imperial strategy. Rather than expanding the empire, Hadrian focused on strengthening it from within. He personally inspected the Roman army, improved discipline, repaired neglected forts, and reorganized frontier defenses. Unlike emperors who ruled comfortably from Rome, Hadrian preferred to travel. He believed an emperor should see his empire with his own eyes, instead of relying only on reports from distant governors. Over the next decade, Hadrian began one of the longest imperial journeys in Roman history. He visited Gaul, Germany, Spain, North Africa, Greece, Asia Minor, Egypt, and Britain. Wherever he traveled, he inspected military camps, listened to local officials, solved disputes, and ordered new public works. Roman citizens were amazed to see their emperor walking through their cities instead of hiding inside the imperial palace. No Roman emperor had ever spent so much time among his people. One province, however, demanded his immediate attention: Roman Britain. For decades, fierce northern tribes beyond Roman control had launched sudden raids against frontier settlements. They attacked villages, destroyed farms, and disappeared into the rugged hills before Roman legions could respond. Victory in these endless campaigns seemed impossible. Hadrian chose a different solution. In 122 AD, he ordered the construction of one of the greatest engineering projects in Roman history: a colossal stone wall stretching across northern Britain. Nearly 117 kilometers, 73 miles long, lined with forts, watchtowers, gates, and military camps, it would become known forever as Hadrian's Wall. Its purpose was not simply to stop invasions. It was a symbol, a declaration that Rome had reached the limits of its expansion. From this moment onward, the empire would defend its borders instead of endlessly pushing them farther. As thousands of Roman engineers and soldiers began building the wall stone by stone, Hadrian continued his journey across the empire, strengthening Rome through peace instead of conquest. But while Britain slowly became secure, trouble was already growing in another corner of the empire. Far to the east, in the ancient land of Judea, a rebellion was beginning that would become one of the bloodiest wars Rome had fought since the days of Nero. While Hadrian strengthened Rome's frontiers and traveled across the empire, one province remained deeply troubled: Judea. More than 50 years had passed since the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, but the wounds had never healed. The magnificent Second Temple was gone, thousands had been killed or enslaved, and resentment toward Roman rule continued to grow with every passing year. At first, Hadrian tried to calm the province. He ordered roads repaired, encouraged trade, and restored order. But his vision for Judea was very different from that of its people. The turning point came when Hadrian announced that a new Roman city would be built on the ruins of Jerusalem. It would be called Aelia Capitolina, named after Hadrian's family and dedicated to the Roman god Jupiter. To the Jewish population, this was not simply another construction project, it was seen as an attempt to erase the memory of their holy city. At the same time, several Roman policies further increased tensions. Religious practices were restricted, Roman culture spread rapidly through the province, and anger turned into open resistance. By 132 AD, the province exploded into rebellion. A charismatic leader named Simon Bar Kokhba united thousands of Jewish fighters. To many of his followers, he was not just a military commander, but the promised leader who would restore Jewish independence. Villages, towns, and hidden mountain fortresses quickly joined the revolt. The Romans were caught completely by surprise. Entire Roman garrisons were destroyed, supply routes were cut, and several forts fell into rebel hands. For a short time, Bar Kokhba's forces successfully controlled much of Judea and even established an independent administration. Coins were minted in the name of a free Jewish state, something Rome had believed impossible. News of the uprising shocked Hadrian. This was no ordinary revolt. It had become one of the greatest challenges of his reign. Determined to crush the rebellion, Hadrian summoned experienced generals and elite legions from across the empire. Reinforcements arrived from Britain, the Danube frontier, Syria, and Egypt. Thousands of battle-hardened Roman soldiers marched into Judea, surrounding rebel strongholds one after another. Unlike previous wars, the Romans avoided reckless attacks. Instead, they slowly isolated each fortress, cut off food and water supplies, and forced the defenders into impossible situations. Villages suspected of supporting the rebellion were destroyed, while roads and mountain passes were brought under Roman control. The fighting lasted for years. Both sides suffered terrible losses. The final and most decisive battle took place at the fortress of Bethar in 135 AD. Surrounded by Roman legions, Bar Kokhba and his remaining followers fought desperately until the city's defenses finally collapsed. The fortress was stormed, and Bar Kokhba was killed. With his death, organized resistance came to an end. The consequences were devastating. Ancient sources describe entire towns left in ruins, countless lives lost, and thousands of survivors sold into slavery. Large parts of Judea were depopulated, making it one of the bloodiest conflicts of the Roman Empire. After the victory, Hadrian took extraordinary measures to prevent another rebellion. The province of Judea was officially renamed Syria Palestina, removing the ancient name from Roman administration. Jerusalem remained Aelia Capitolina, and Jews were largely forbidden from entering the city except on limited occasions. For Rome, the revolt had been crushed. But the memory of the conflict would echo through history for centuries. As Hadrian restored order across the empire, another chapter of his life was quietly unfolding, one that had nothing to do with war or politics. It was the story of a young man named Antinous, whose mysterious death would become one of the greatest mysteries of the Roman world. By 136 AD, the smoke of the Bar Kokhba Revolt had finally cleared. Rome had crushed the rebellion, but the victory came at a terrible cost. Thousands of Roman soldiers had been killed, entire towns lay in ruins, and Hadrian himself had witnessed one of the bloodiest conflicts of his reign. Although the empire remained secure, years of constant travel, administration, and war had begun to take their toll on the aging emperor. Unlike Trajan, Hadrian no longer dreamed of conquering new lands. Instead, he dedicated his remaining years to strengthening the empire from within. Across Rome, Greece, Asia Minor, and North Africa, he ordered the construction of magnificent temples, libraries, roads, bridges, aqueducts, and public buildings. Wherever he traveled, he left behind monuments that reflected both Roman power and Greek culture. Among all his architectural achievements, none became more famous than the magnificent Pantheon in Rome. Although an earlier temple had existed on the site, Hadrian completely rebuilt it into the breathtaking structure that still stands today. With its massive dome and perfect engineering, it became one of the greatest architectural masterpieces of the ancient world. Yet behind the emperor's success lay a deeply personal tragedy. For years, Hadrian had shared a close friendship with a young man named Antinous. The two traveled together across the empire, and Antinous became one of the emperor's closest companions. Then, during a journey through Egypt in 130 AD, disaster struck. While sailing on the river Nile, Antinous mysteriously drowned. No one knew exactly what had happened. Some believed it was a tragic accident. Others whispered that he had sacrificed himself to save the emperor's life. Still others suspected political murder. The truth was never discovered. Hadrian was devastated. His grief was unlike anything Rome had ever witnessed from an emperor. Instead of allowing Antinous to disappear into history, Hadrian ordered an entirely new city to be founded in his honor, Antinopolis. Statues of Antinous appeared across the empire, temples were built in his memory, and many people even began worshipping him as a divine figure. It remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the Roman Empire. As the years passed, Hadrian's own health steadily declined. He suffered from chronic illness and increasing physical pain, making it difficult for him to continue the long journeys that had defined his reign. Knowing that Rome needed a peaceful transition of power, Hadrian searched carefully for a worthy successor. His first choice died unexpectedly, forcing the emperor to make another decision. In 138 AD, Hadrian adopted Antoninus Pius, a respected senator known for his wisdom and calm leadership. But the adoption came with one important condition. Antoninus would later adopt Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus, ensuring that capable rulers, not chance or civil war, would guide the empire into the future. It was one of Hadrian's greatest political achievements. On 10 July 138 AD, Emperor Hadrian died at the age of 62, after ruling for more than 20 years. At first, the Roman Senate refused to honor him, because many senators still resented his decisions and his strong authority. But Antoninus Pius insisted that Hadrian deserved respect for preserving the empire during one of its most difficult periods. Eventually, the Senate agreed. Hadrian was declared a god. History would remember him very differently from Trajan. Trajan became famous for expanding Rome to its greatest size. Hadrian became famous for ensuring that enormous empire could survive. His defensive strategy, his massive building projects, and the construction of Hadrian's Wall protected Rome for generations. His reign proved that true greatness is not always measured by the lands an emperor conquers, but by the civilization he preserves. With Hadrian's death, the empire entered another remarkable chapter under Antoninus Pius, a ruler whose peaceful reign would bring Rome unprecedented stability and prosperity. The age of the five good emperors was only reaching its golden peak.